The morning was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the whole world had paused to mourn with him. Mr. Thompson woke up earlier than usual, though sleep had barely touched him the night before. His bed felt empty, too big, too cold, and the room smelled faintly of the flowers he had bought yesterday but hadn't had the heart to place anywhere yet. Today, he knew, he had to face the day differently. Today, he had to go to his son's grave. The thought weighed on him like a stone in his chest. Every breath felt heavier than the last, and even the simple act of sitting up seemed like a struggle. His son, David, had been gone for months now, yet the pain had not dulled one bit. It was sharper, somehow, with each passing day, a persistent ache that refused to fade. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. His mind wandered back to the last time he had seen David alive. The memory was vivid and haunting. David had been laughing, full of life, teasing his father about the smallest things, like the way he always wore mismatched socks or forgot to put sugar in his morning coffee. The sound of that laughter now echoed painfully in Mr. Thompson's head, a cruel reminder of what he had lost. He could still see David's smile, so wide and bright, so full of hope, and he could almost feel the warmth of his hand in his. The memory made his chest tighten, and for a moment, he felt as though he could reach out and pull his son back from the depths of the past, though he knew it was impossible. The reality was cruel and relentless, and he had spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Mr. Thompson's grief was not just sadness, it was a constant, gnawing presence. It followed him everywhere, in the kitchen, when he made breakfast for one, in the living room, where David's toys and belongings still sat untouched, and even in the car, when he drove past streets they had walked together. Every familiar place was a reminder of his loss. Even the little things, the ordinary moments, now felt like reminders of the life that had been cruelly taken away. Grief, he realized, had become his companion, a shadow that would not leave. Despite the heaviness, he forced himself to get ready. He dressed slowly, methodically, as if the act of dressing could give him some sense of control over the chaos inside him. He combed his hair, buttoned his shirt, and tried to steady his breathing. Outside, the sky was gray, and the morning drizzle began to fall softly on the windows. It mirrored the sadness in his heart perfectly. The rain didn't bother him, it felt like the world itself was sharing in his mourning. He picked up the bouquet of flowers he had prepared the night before. Their bright colors contrasted sharply with the dullness in his mind, but they gave him something tangible, a small offering to carry to the place where his son rested. As he drove toward the cemetery, the silence in the car was deafening. The streets were almost empty, and the sound of windshield wipers swishing back and forth seemed to emphasize the heaviness of the moment. With every turn of the wheel, memories pressed against him, David running through the yard, calling out to him, the smell of freshly baked cookies on Sunday mornings, the sound of his homework papers scattered across the kitchen table. Each memory was a knife in his heart, and yet he clung to them, because they were all he had left. He tried to tell himself that this visit to the grave was not just for mourning but for honoring his son, for showing him that he was still remembered and loved, even though he was gone. But the truth was, he wasn't sure if he was doing it for David or for himself, to ease the unbearable emptiness in his chest. As he neared the cemetery, his pace slowed. The familiar iron gates came into view, surrounded by rows of silent stones, each one a testament to a life lived and lost. He parked the car and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, taking deep, uneven breaths. The bouquet rested on his lap, a fragile symbol of life amidst the stillness of death. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the door, stepping out into the cool, damp morning air. Every step toward David's grave felt like walking through thick mud, each footfall heavy with grief. The world seemed distant and unreal, and yet the sight of the cemetery, the familiar stone markers, and the earth where his son rested made it painfully real. Standing in front of David's grave, Mr. Thompson could barely speak. His throat felt dry, his eyes stung with tears that refused to fall at first. He knelt slowly, laying the bouquet on the freshly turned soil. He touched the stone, tracing David's name with trembling fingers, and whispered words that only he could hear, words filled with love, sorrow, and longing. In that moment, the world shrank to just him and his son, separated by death but connected by an unbreakable bond. His grief was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting, a reminder that love never truly dies, even when life does. After leaving his house, Mr. Thompson drove slowly through the quiet streets. The morning rain had stopped, leaving a soft mist hanging in the air, blurring the edges of the world like a dream. Every familiar corner seemed different somehow, or perhaps it was just him, his heart so heavy with sorrow that everything felt distorted, as if reality itself was bending around his grief. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, and stared straight ahead, but his mind was far away, drifting through memories both sweet and painful. As he drove, he remembered the small things about David that had once made life feel full and simple. The way he would insist on wearing his bright yellow sneakers even when they didn't match his outfit, or how he would sing at the top of his lungs in the shower, completely unaware of anyone else's presence. These were small fragments of life that now felt sacred, moments frozen in time that he could never relive. Each memory was bittersweet, bringing both warmth and a sharp, aching pain. The neighborhood passed slowly, each house a silent witness to his loneliness. He noticed the old oak tree where David had climbed every summer, refusing to come down until Mr. Thompson promised him ice cream. The bakery where they used to buy fresh bread every Saturday morning, the little playground where David had raced across the swings, everything held echoes of the past, reminders of a son who had once filled the world with laughter. The streets were empty today, and yet the memories seemed to follow him, invisible but persistent, whispering in his ears like shadows he could never shake. Even as he drove, he noticed small, almost trivial details that suddenly felt monumental. A paper fluttering across the sidewalk, a cat leaping over a fence, the way the sunlight broke through the clouds for just a moment before hiding again, they all made him think of David, as if the world itself was reminding him of the boy he had lost. Sometimes he imagined seeing David waving from across the street, running toward him with that familiar grin, and his chest tightened with longing. Each imagined moment was both comforting and cruel, teasing him with a reality that no longer existed. The road to the cemetery was long, winding through hills and quiet neighborhoods, each turn bringing him closer to the place he dreaded yet needed to visit. Mr. Thompson's thoughts drifted between regret and longing. He replayed the last conversation he had with David over and over in his mind. It had been ordinary, David asking for advice about school, Mr. Thompson teasing him about his messy room, but now, every word seemed loaded with meaning he hadn't noticed before. Guilt gnawed at him because he wished he had said something more, done something differently, something to change the outcome. Yet he knew he had to keep moving forward. Today was about paying his respects, even if it hurt more than he could bear. As he approached the outskirts of town, the scenery changed. The neatly trimmed lawns and orderly streets gave way to open fields and old, winding paths. The wind blew gently, carrying with it the scent of wet grass and earth. He slowed down as he neared the cemetery gates, his hands tightening around the wheel. The silence was heavy, almost alive, pressing in from all sides. Even the birds seemed quieter here, as if they too felt the weight of sorrow. He parked the car, his heart pounding in his chest. Every step he took from the car toward the cemetery felt like crossing a bridge between two worlds, one filled with life and laughter, the other filled with absence and grief. With the bouquet resting on his lap, he took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The mist clung to his coat, cold and damp, but he barely noticed. His eyes were drawn to the rows of graves stretching ahead, each one a reminder of life's fragility. He imagined David somewhere in the distance, perhaps laughing at one of his father's clumsy attempts to hide sadness, and for a moment, he allowed himself to hope, even though logic told him it was impossible. Today, he would face the grave, face the finality of loss, and somehow, he would carry the love he had for his son into the quiet, still morning that awaited him. The gates of the cemetery loomed ahead, wrought iron black and slightly rusted, standing like silent sentinels guarding countless stories of loss. Mr. Thompson slowed his car to a crawl as he approached them, the crunch of wet gravel beneath the tires echoing unnervingly in the still morning air. The mist from the fields clung to his coat, curling around his shoulders like ghostly fingers. For a moment, he hesitated, gripping the steering wheel as if it could anchor him against the tide of emotions threatening to sweep him away. Each step he took beyond the gates felt heavier than the last, weighted with anticipation, grief, and a strange sense of dread. He parked near a narrow path lined with weathered stone markers. The grass was damp, the soil soft, and the air smelled faintly of earth and flowers, a mix that seemed both comforting and cruel. He paused, taking a deep breath, and in that quiet pause, memories of David flooded his mind again. He could see him running along these very paths, chasing after birds, laughing at the smallest things. He could hear his voice calling out for help when he had climbed too high in the oak trees, demanding ice cream as a reward for bravery. The memories were vivid, almost tangible, and for a moment, the line between past and present blurred. As Mr. Thompson walked down the path, he noticed something strange. The soil near one of the graves seemed freshly disturbed, the grass slightly trampled, and a faint scent of flowers lingered in the air. It wasn't David's grave, he knew that well, but the sight made his heart skip a beat. Who could be here so early, so close to his son's resting place? He felt a shiver run down his spine, not entirely from the morning chill. Clutching the bouquet tighter, he rounded a corner and saw David's grave ahead, marked with a simple stone engraved with his name, birthdate, and the date he had passed. The flowers he had left during his last visit were gone, replaced by a neat arrangement of freshly cut blooms. For a moment, he stood frozen, unsure whether to feel comforted or disturbed. Someone had been here recently, someone who cared enough to leave flowers, but who could it be? Then he saw the figure. At first, it was just a shadow, kneeling beside the grave. The way the morning light fell made it difficult to see clearly, but as his eyes focused, he felt his stomach drop. The figure was placing flowers carefully on the stone, moving with a reverence and precision that caught Mr. Thompson completely off guard. His breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be, but it looked so much like David that for a moment, reality seemed to twist around him. He blinked several times, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The figure turned slightly, and the resemblance was uncanny, the same height, the same posture, the same way the hands moved as if they remembered the same habits David had. His heart pounded, a mix of fear, disbelief, and a longing that clawed at his chest. This was impossible. His mind raced for explanations, each one more absurd than the last. Was it a twin he never knew about? A friend who looked exactly like his son? Or was he losing his mind, his grief twisting reality into cruel illusions? Mr. Thompson's feet moved almost without his permission. He stepped closer, every step shaking, every heartbeat loud in his ears. The closer he got, the clearer the figure became, and the more impossible it seemed. The flowers were now laid gently, the petals brushing against the stone, the hands trembling ever so slightly as if in a silent ritual. Mr. Thompson wanted to call out, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat, thick and unformed. He felt a strange mixture of fear and hope, two emotions that had never felt so intertwined. His entire being wanted to run away, yet another part, the deepest part of him that still clung to love, urged him forward. This moment, he realized, would define him. The truth, whatever it was, awaited him here. With trembling hands, he stepped onto the patch of damp earth near the grave, the bouquet still clutched to his chest. Every step brought him closer to an impossible confrontation, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, death, and the fragile, mysterious threads that bound them together. Mr. Thompson froze in his tracks, the bouquet slipping slightly from his hands as his eyes locked on the figure kneeling by the grave. For a moment, the world around him disappeared, the mist, the trees, even the soft hum of morning life seemed to fade into silence. There, in front of him, was someone who looked exactly like his son, David. But that was impossible. David was gone. Dead. The thought slammed into him like a physical blow, yet what he was seeing refused to be ignored. The figure carefully placed another flower on the stone, straightening it just so, brushing the petals with delicate hands. Mr. Thompson's breath caught in his chest. The movement, the posture, the tilt of the head, it was all so familiar, hauntingly familiar. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it, clinging to logic that kept slipping away. Could it be a twin? An old friend who had somehow grown to resemble David? Or was it a trick of the light, a cruel illusion crafted by his grief? Every instinct told him to step back, to run away from this impossible scene, yet his feet moved forward, drawn as if by a magnet, as if some invisible thread tied his heart to what he had always thought he'd lost forever. The closer he got, the more detailed the figure became. The familiar curve of the shoulders, the way the hands trembled slightly while arranging the flowers, even the faint scar on the left knuckle, it was David. Or at least, it had to be. But how? How could this be possible? Mr. Thompson's heart raced, thumping so loudly that he could feel it in his throat. He tried to call out, "David," but his voice was a whisper, swallowed by the heavy morning air. He cleared his throat and tried again, louder this time, but the figure did not react immediately. His son's, or whoever this was, head was bowed, focused entirely on the act of laying flowers. The careful attention to detail, the reverence in every movement, made Mr. Thompson's chest tighten even more. It wasn't just resemblance, it was the essence of David, every small, human gesture he remembered so vividly. As he stepped closer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the cemetery, lifting the mist like a curtain. For a brief moment, he could see the face fully. His knees nearly buckled. It was David, alive, or at least somehow standing there before him, perfectly real and terrifyingly impossible. The mind wants to deny what the eyes cannot unsee, but Mr. Thompson could not. The grief, the years of pain, the countless nights of silent tears, all seemed to converge into this single, impossible moment. He wanted to reach out, to touch him, to confirm that this was real, yet fear rooted him to the spot. What if it was a ghost, a vision, or worse, some trick of his mind driven by desperation? But the sight was so detailed, so undeniably alive, that no explanation seemed adequate. The figure's hand lifted another flower from the small pile beside the grave and placed it gently, almost ceremoniously. Each movement was deliberate, filled with a silent emotion that Mr. Thompson had only ever seen in David himself. A sudden wave of dizziness swept over him, his stomach turning as the reality of the situation pressed in from all sides. This was no coincidence. This was no trick of the light. Someone, or something, was here, someone who should not exist in this world. His mind raced through possibilities, absurd and impossible, each one more shocking than the last. And yet, beneath all the fear and disbelief, there was a flicker of hope, a longing so raw and powerful it nearly brought tears to his eyes. Time seemed to stretch and bend as Mr. Thompson stood there, watching, frozen in a moment that would forever change the course of his life. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement of the figure knelt at the grave was seared into his memory. He could not look away. Part of him wanted to scream, part of him wanted to run, but the deepest part, the part that loved David more than anything, urged him to stay, to witness, to understand. And then, as the figure finally straightened, gently brushing hands across the stone as if to say a silent prayer, Mr. Thompson realized that this encounter would not just be shocking, it would challenge everything he had ever believed about life, loss, and the mysterious ways in which love refuses to fade, even in the face of death. Mr. Thompson's heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo through the misty cemetery. He took a tentative step forward, the gravel crunching under his shoes, and felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The figure, kneeling by the grave, moved with a slow, deliberate grace, placing another flower with care. It was David, or it looked exactly like him, and yet, his mind screamed at him that this was impossible. How could his son be here, alive, kneeling on the ground that should have held only memories? He tried to speak, his voice catching in his throat. "David," he whispered, barely audible. His heart clenched as the figure slowly lifted its head. For a split second, it seemed as if time itself froze. The eyes met, and Mr. Thompson felt a strange mix of terror, disbelief, and longing. It was him. It had to be. The same warm, brown eyes stared back, familiar and haunting. But there was something different, a shadow, a subtle hesitation, like the figure knew secrets Mr. Thompson did not. Mr. Thompson's legs trembled, and he knelt a few feet away from the grave, unsure whether to approach further. "David, it's me, it's your father," he stammered, his voice breaking. The words felt inadequate, too small for the moment. He wanted to reach out, to touch him, to feel the solid reality of his son, but fear and disbelief held him back. What if he was wrong? What if this was a cruel illusion, a trick of his mind? The figure slowly turned, the movement deliberate, almost cautious. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and trembling. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," he said. Mr. Thompson froze, every nerve in his body screaming. That voice, it was David's, yet there was a depth, a strain in it that he had never heard before. It carried sorrow, regret, and a truth that the father could not yet grasp. What are you saying?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice cracking, tears threatening to fall. How are you here? You're supposed to be gone." Each word trembled with raw emotion, a mixture of anger, fear, and desperate hope. His hands shook as he clutched the bouquet, gripping it like a lifeline to something real. The figure took a hesitant step forward, and for the first time, Mr. Thompson noticed the small details, the faint tremor in his hands, the way his shoulders slumped with unspoken weight, the haunted look in his eyes. I didn't die," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I had to disappear. I had to survive." The words were shocking, and Mr. Thompson felt the ground shift beneath him. His mind struggled to keep up with the impossible reality unfolding before him. Tears blurred his vision as he stumbled closer. Survive? David, my son, you were. I buried you. His voice cracked completely, emotions spilling over. He sank to his knees beside the grave, his hands shaking as he reached toward him. I thought I'd lost you forever. I've carried this pain every day. How could you be here? The figure looked down, guilt written across his face. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it was the only way to protect you, protect us. He paused, his voice breaking. I couldn't let anyone know, not yet. I needed time to figure out how to come back to you safely. Mr. Thompson's chest heaved, a mixture of relief, sorrow, and disbelief threatening to overwhelm him. He reached out, finally, and touched his son's arm. The warmth of the skin beneath his fingers confirmed the impossible truth, this was real. His son was here, alive, kneeling before him. The bouquet slipped from his hand, forgotten, as he held him tightly, feeling the weight of months of grief dissolve in a moment of pure, raw emotion. I thought I lost you forever, he whispered, his tears falling freely now. I thought I would never see you again. I can't believe this is real. David, or the figure who was his son, looked at him, a fragile smile breaking through the fear and sorrow. I'm here, Dad. I'm here now. I promise, I'm here. And in that moment, kneeling together by the grave, father and son, separated by grief and reunited by a shocking miracle, the world outside seemed to fade. There was only them, only the weight of love, sorrow, and relief mingling in the quiet morning, and the silent acknowledgement that nothing would ever be the same again. Mr. Thompson sat back slightly, still holding his son's arm, but the questions in his mind churned like a storm he could no longer ignore. David, you said you survived, but how? How is this possible? I saw your grave. I buried you. I mourned you. His voice trembled, thick with disbelief and desperation. Every word was a thread of hope and fear, tugging him in opposite directions. He wanted answers, but part of him feared them, fearing that the truth might shatter him even more. David, or the figure who had returned from what everyone thought was death, took a deep breath, the morning mist curling around him like a protective cloak. His eyes, still filled with sorrow, met his father's. "Dad, it's complicated. I can't explain it all in one go. But you need to know, what you thought you knew about that day, it wasn't the full story." He paused, as if weighing every word carefully, and Mr. Thompson leaned in closer, sensing the weight of what was coming. You weren't supposed to see me like this yet," David whispered, voice low but steady. "After the accident, after the fire, everyone thought I was gone. But I wasn't. Somehow, I survived. I lost my memory at first, didn't even know who I was, who my family was. For months, I wandered, trying to find a way back." Mr. Thompson's hand shook as he pressed his palm to his forehead, trying to process what he was hearing. "You survived, but no one knew." His voice was a mixture of awe and incredulity. "Why didn't you come back sooner? Why hide?" David's lips trembled, and he swallowed hard. "I couldn't risk it. I had enemies, things that could have hurt you, hurt our family. I had to stay away until I could be certain it was safe. I thought I was protecting you, protecting Mom. I didn't want anyone else to know until I knew it was the right time." He looked down at the ground for a moment, shame flickering across his face. Then he met his father's gaze again, his eyes imploring, begging for understanding. "I never stopped thinking about you, Dad. Never. Every day, I dreamed of coming back, but every day, something held me back. I had to make sure I could return, alive, without danger, without risk." Mr. Thompson's chest heaved, a mixture of anger, relief, and overwhelming love fighting for dominance. "All this time. I've cried, I've mourned, I've thought I'd lost you forever. You were my son, and I buried you. I carried that pain with me every single day. And now you're here, alive, in front of me." His voice broke completely, tears streaming freely down his face. The grief, the sorrow, the months of despair, all crashed into one unbearable wave, and yet beneath it, a glimmer of joy, raw and impossible, shone like sunlight through storm clouds. David reached out, touching his father's shoulder. "I know, Dad. I know. I can't undo the pain, the grief, the sorrow you felt. But I'm here now. I'm really here. And I'm not going anywhere." The sincerity in his voice was like a lifeline, anchoring Mr. Thompson in the moment, giving him permission to breathe, to hope, to forgive himself for the unbearable months of mourning. They sat in silence for a few moments, the cemetery around them quiet, almost reverent. The mist began to lift, the first hints of sunlight breaking through the clouds. It was as if the world itself was acknowledging the miracle unfolding on that small patch of earth, where grief and love collided, where impossible truths revealed themselves, and where father and son were reunited against all odds. Finally, Mr. Thompson whispered, voice still trembling, "I don't understand all of it, but I don't care. You're here. That's all that matters. That's all I need." He wrapped his arms around his son, holding him tightly, as though letting go could erase the reality of this impossible moment. David hugged him back, feeling the weight of months, years, and secrets lift ever so slightly. "I'm here, Dad, and I'm never leaving again," he promised. The words were simple, but they carried the gravity of every obstacle, every secret, every fear that had kept them apart. It was a revelation that changed everything, an impossible truth, finally laid bare, and a bond restored in the most unimaginable way. In that quiet morning, surrounded by mist and memory, the father realized that life could surprise you in ways no heart could predict. Loss could turn into reunion, despair into hope, and the impossible could become reality, if only one had the courage to see it through. The morning sun had broken through the mist now, casting a soft, golden light over the cemetery. Every droplet on the grass glittered like tiny diamonds, and the quiet rustle of leaves whispered through the trees, as if nature itself had paused to witness the reunion. Mr. Thompson and David remained kneeling beside the grave, but the tension in the air had shifted. The shock and disbelief had given way to something heavier, something more powerful, an overwhelming release of emotion that neither father nor son could hold back any longer. Mr. Thompson's hands trembled as he reached out, brushing his fingers across the stone. The name carved into the gray granite, the name of the boy he had thought he'd lost forever, felt impossibly real beneath his touch. He let out a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that comes when grief has been held for far too long and finally spills over. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears streamed freely now, running down his face unchecked, soaking the collar of his coat. Every sob carried months of pain, nights spent staring at the ceiling, mornings waking to an emptiness that seemed impossible to bear. David reached forward, taking his father's hands in his own. The warmth of his touch, so alive and real, sent a wave of relief and joy rushing through Mr. Thompson, mingling with the sorrow that still lingered. I know, Dad, David said softly, his voice trembling with the weight of his own hidden struggles. I never wanted you to feel this way. I tried to survive, to find a way back, and now I'm here. I'm with you. The father's chest heaved as he buried his face in David's shoulder, holding him tightly. It was more than relief, it was a catharsis, a release of every bottled-up emotion, every tear he had refused to shed in public, every scream he had swallowed in private. For months, grief had been a relentless shadow, following him through every room, every street, every quiet moment. But now, in the presence of the living proof of his son's survival, the shadow began to lift, replaced by the warmth of reunion and the fragile, shimmering light of hope. David, still kneeling beside his father, felt a similar release. For so long, he had carried secrets, fear, and the burden of survival alone. The weight of months spent in hiding, months spent navigating danger and uncertainty, pressed on him now in the form of tears. He finally allowed himself to cry openly, to let the world see the vulnerability he had hidden, knowing that his father would understand, that his love could carry him through it. The air between them seemed to pulse with raw, unfiltered emotion, grief, love, relief, and forgiveness all entwined in a single, powerful moment. For a long time, they simply held each other, wordless, as the world moved quietly around them. The flowers on the grave, the ones Mr. Thompson had brought, the ones David had arranged, wavered gently in the breeze, a silent testament to the complexity of life and death, of absence and return. Every heartbeat echoed a truth neither could deny, that love is enduring, that even the deepest pain can be softened by connection, and that sometimes, miracles arrive in forms more unimaginable than one could ever hope for. Finally, Mr. Thompson pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against David's. I can't believe this is real, he said, voice trembling but full of awe. I thought I would never hold you again. I thought all of this was lost forever. David smiled faintly, brushing the tears from his father's cheeks. It is real, Dad. I'm here. And I won't ever leave you like that again. His words were simple, but in their simplicity lay a promise as profound as the ocean and as enduring as time itself. Mr. Thompson looked around at the quiet cemetery, the soft sunlight, the gentle rustling of leaves, and for the first time in months, he felt something he had almost forgotten, peace. The grief had not disappeared, it never would entirely, but it had transformed, softened by the miraculous reunion, shaped now by hope and love rather than despair. He squeezed his son's hand, holding on tightly, and whispered, "Thank you, for coming back to me." And in that small, sacred space, between the stones of the past and the promise of the future, father and son found a moment that would last forever in memory, a catharsis that healed the deepest wounds, that brought closure, that reminded them both that love, in its purest form, could conquer even the most impossible losses. The cemetery was bathed in a soft, golden glow as the morning sun climbed higher into the sky, chasing away the lingering mist. Mr. Thompson stood quietly beside his son, David, the weight of the past months still pressing lightly on his shoulders, but now softened by the miraculous truth before him. He looked around at the rows of graves, each a silent story of life and loss, and felt a sense of perspective that had been impossible to grasp in the depths of grief. Today, everything had changed. For months, he had wandered through life like a man half lost, carrying the memory of David's death like a stone in his chest. Every routine, every empty room, every quiet meal for one had reminded him of what he had lost. But now, standing here, he understood that grief was not just a shadow to endure, it was a measure of the depth of love, and love, even in its most painful forms, could lead to unexpected miracles. David, standing beside him, gently brushed his hand across his father's arm. He looked at him with a mixture of relief and pride, the kind that comes from surviving impossible odds and returning to the ones who never stopped believing. "Dad," he said softly, "I know this doesn't erase the past. I know it can't take away the pain you felt, the nights you cried, the emptiness you carried. But I'm here now. And I promise, we'll face the future together." Mr. Thompson nodded, swallowing hard, feeling tears well up once more, but these were not only tears of sorrow. They were tears of release, of gratitude, of joy mingled with relief. He thought about how fragile life could be, how sudden and unexpected loss could feel, and yet how resilient the human heart was in the face of unimaginable surprises. "I never imagined this moment," he whispered, voice trembling, "but I'll never forget it. And I'll never take a single day with you for granted again." As they walked slowly down the path, leaving the grave behind but carrying its memory in their hearts, Mr. Thompson reflected on the lessons of the past months. Life was unpredictable, fragile, and often cruel, yet it also held wonders that defied reason. People grieve, yes, but they also survive, and sometimes, what seems impossible is only waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Love, he realized, was the constant, the force that could endure absence, hardship, and time itself. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of dew and flowers, and the sound of birds filled the spaces between trees. Mr. Thompson felt a strange sense of calm settle over him, a quiet understanding that even though life would continue to challenge them, they were no longer facing it alone. The bond between father and son had been tested by tragedy, strengthened by endurance, and ultimately reaffirmed by the miracle of David's return. It was a reminder that even in the darkest hours, hope could take root, quietly but unrelentingly, and grow into something beautiful. David glanced at his father, a smile playing across his lips. "I want to help you heal, Dad. We've both lost time, but we still have the future. Let's make it count." Mr. Thompson smiled through his tears, feeling the tension and grief of the past months dissolve slowly, replaced by warmth and love. "Yes, David. Every day counts. Every moment. We'll cherish them together." They paused for a final moment, looking back at the grave once more. The flowers they had placed together glistened in the sunlight, a symbol of memory, love, and continuity. The past would always be there, a shadow and a reminder, but it no longer controlled them. What mattered now was the present, the life they could rebuild, the bond they could strengthen, and the shared moments that lay ahead. As they walked toward the exit of the cemetery, side by side, their hands brushed, and Mr. Thompson realized something profound. Grief might never fully leave, but love could transform it, could make it bearable, and could even turn tragedy into something unexpectedly beautiful. Today, he had learned that miracles could happen, that hope could survive the darkest nights, and that life, with all its unpredictability, could offer second chances that felt almost impossible to believe. And so, as the morning light filled the world, father and son stepped forward together, carrying with them the past but embracing the future, their hearts lighter, their bond stronger, and their spirits forever changed by the extraordinary journey they had survived, a journey that would live in their memories forever.